Okay, welcome everybody to Barco's Digital Canvas Part 2. I am your host, Gustavo with Pure Audio Video, and we are joined today by Tim Sinnaeve from head of Barco Residential and Rob Anders, who is the founder of Niio. So Rob, let's get started. For people who don't know, what is Niio? Can you talk a little bit about what the platform is and why you got started?
Yeah, so thanks for inviting us on today. It's funny because the way that we would need to present ourselves pre-COVID and pre this phrase NFT that a lot of people that might be watching have heard since the beginning of this year, we would have to, start from educating people from a very different place to today. Neo is probably today the world's leading platform for digital art, which essentially means we are a platform which brings together on the one side the largest community of high quality digital artists, currently over 6,500 artists from 82 countries. And these are artists who specialize in creating digital artwork, ultimately artwork created digitally to be experienced digitally, usually screen-based or projector-based, and thus the relationship with Barco. And through our platform, this community is able to showcase their works to the broadest possible audience and make it very easy for consumers on the other side to discover and then experience the very highest quality digital art on their screens at home or beyond, according to different business models. So whether they want to subscribe in a kind of Spotify type model, which gives people access and an introduction to this space, or whether people actually want to loan or purchase limited edition, high quality artworks. And of course, now in the world of NFTs, that's very much hand in hand with what we have to offer. The company was founded a few years ago. We're very fortunate to be supported by, on the one side, some of the leading venture capitalists in this world who come from a background in scaling very large media content related businesses, but also some of the most influential people in the art world, board members of the Guggenheim and the MoMA, largest collectors in Asia. And so we've been very fortunate to bring together a group of people who think that in the world we live in today, as we're going through, I guess the fourth industrial revolution and digital transformation, and we're living our lives pinned in front of screens, and everywhere we go, advertising and information is trying to bombard us. We feel that it's important for people to have an opportunity for that meaningful moment, a moment to stop, to reflect. And in some ways, that's what art does. Art is obviously a space which is highly adored by some, and almost scary for others because it was almost somewhat exclusive. So for us, we see the digital art medium as the medium that can reach the broadest audience. It's the medium which is most relevant for today's world, and we believe it's the one which can be most accessible, where by partnering with people like Barco, we're able to enable people to really have a seamless experience, similar to how you can now experience music or other content sectors. So that's Niio in a nutshell, and it's a very exciting time to be in this space because clearly the market is really blowing up right now.
Absolutely. So that, to me, what I'm hearing from you is you saw the void in the market because you wanted to, because of this digital transition, because we're living in an age of software and digital experiences, you said there's a tremendous opportunity here to expand how people experience art, to make art more accessible for more people, and to
Mhm.
still not sacrifice quality for the art collectors, for the people who want to experience, museum quality art in their homes. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that first of all, myself and my co-founder, a guy called Oren Moshe, have been in building out large, scalable, high-tech companies over the last 20 years. And when you get a little bit older and a little bit grayer, and you have kids, you look for businesses which actually have impact as well as just revenue driving. And anyway, I think that's how you get the best people, the best teams. And so, yes, there was definitely a strong purpose to try and reach the broadest possible audience. For many years already, it's become almost cliche, the notion of art for the masses. And like other content sectors, it all started with people being able to go online and buy a painting that is then shipped and delivered, a physical painting to your home. We come from a background of really using the cutting edge of technology, and we were looking at the very beginning of this journey. We went and spoke with around about 200 artists, galleries, collectors, institutions, established artists, emerging artists, and it was very clear that this is a medium which reflects the world today. Artists will always talk about the world they live in, and artists would always use whatever tools they have to create. And there's more accessibility now, and in the last few years, to creating digital than ever before. It used to be thousands of dollars to have a 4K camera. You can now shoot it on your mobile phone. So I think the combination of that, the combination of the trends towards digital consumption, the trends towards society being comfortable to buy and subscribe to experience content, not just necessarily only having to own things. The transition towards more and more higher quality displays, whether it was monitors or whether it's high quality projection. All of these trends came together, and then obviously during COVID, people are locked down, everyone's scrambling, and sectors which were always going to sort of actually, it's like a rocket has gone up. And then you bring into the mix 100,000 people in the last 12 months who've become millionaires through, the crypto explosions. And art has always actually been, to some people and to some extent, it's an asset class. Now, true art collectors will buy this as custodians of culture, but for others, it's speculation, it's investment, and for other people who have money, it's the ability to bring something beautiful into their beautiful homes. If they're bringing high quality Barco LEDs and projectors, then it shouldn't just be for the purpose of when you're sitting down and watching a film or a ball game, but it can be an experience rather than a black screen. So, it was a lot of factors together, and we're fortunate to have a great team who have been involved in building large companies. And I think the timing and the stars have lined up, and so right now really is a very exciting time.
That's interesting. I like that answer a lot. I'm curious to hear from Tim. When you first came across Niio, as the head of Barco Residential, what got you excited about it? What opportunities did you see in that potential partnership?
Well, I mean, the first thing, of course, is that I always had a personal interest in art, so that obviously helps. And as we started building Barco Residential, it was quickly clear for us that there were a lot more opportunities than just home theater, which is what people tend to think of at first. So we had already started thinking in that direction, thinking from the perspective of, what can we do with what is essentially digital canvases that we can create. And so when I first met Rob a couple of years ago, it kind of just clicked, right? We had been thinking on that side. Rob was building something that was required, because obviously a digital canvas without the experience to create on it doesn't work. So from my perspective, it was all quite natural. And we started collaborating, exposing people to what this is and what this could be, because it obviously takes a bit of time also for people to get accustomed with what we are talking about. And I also started realizing a lot of other things around it. If you looked at our industry as a whole, it came together with the realization that I thought, we're only reaching a small part of our potential. Thinking that the architecture and design community was the key to unlocking that full potential, then the fact that architects and designers tend to be far more familiar and have a lot more natural affinity with art than they do with home theater, for example, it all kind of fell into place. So from my perspective, it was a little bit like seeing a number of dots in the market that absolutely should be connected, but couldn't necessarily see each other. So, through Rob, I met some gallery owners, spoke to those people as well, spoke to artists, and it just all kind of seemed to fit together. And obviously, it's really, it's a new art form as well, right? I sometimes say, when you look at it, when oil painting was invented or water paint was invented, it led artists to create in new and different ways. And that's the way we should look at technology as well, where too often we just look at technology as a product or a screen or whatever it might be. This is also why it was important to me, or I quickly realized that something that really excited me was being able to liberate digital artists in a way from the 16:9 aspect ratio straitjacket, if you will. It was almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Why is most art or digital art, why is it available in 16:9? Well, because that's what we have to show it on, right? And so if you're not careful, that kind of becomes a limitation that people just accept. And while, of course, it is important to be able to use all the existing canvases and bring that new experience, it's also very exciting to be able to say to an artist, hey, by the way, when you create your vision, you don't have to be limited by that, right? You can create whatever you want, in the same way that a painter doesn't really have any limitations in the shape of the work that he wants to create or the size of the work that he wants to create. So I saw that as something exciting for us as a technology provider to actually make a contribution to the artistic creative process as well, by creating new tools and new opportunities. And Of course, a lot of that I initially kind of thought it myself. So probably one of the scariest things I did in the past couple of years was present my digital art presentation that I had done for integrators to show them what this was and where I think they could play a role. Was doing that presentation for one of the leading digital artists in the world right now, because I was making a lot of assumptions on what this meant to them. And so it was very exciting to see that it really connected with how they felt about it as well, and how all these different aspects of technology can become important in the artistic creative process as well. Even when you look at things like, we've talked about projection, there's direct view LED and things like that as well. As we got deeper into it, it was also exciting for me to kind of discover how specific aspects of different technologies actually create different opportunities. One example is when you look at direct view LED and the different resolutions and dot pitches in direct view LED, that actually translates into texture, right? And texture obviously is an artistic medium. So it was really interesting to introduce even some artists to that, and them going, actually, this is not even how I expected it. People always tend to think the higher the resolution, the better. But that's not necessarily true when you look at art. So when I saw one of these artists come to our headquarters and experiment with different artworks on different technologies, it was really interesting to see him go, actually, I'm not going to go for the highest resolution. I'm going to go for that dot pitch because that gives me the texture that I'm looking for. So there's so many elements of technology that become relevant in the artistic creation process, if that makes sense.
It does. And I think it's also interesting to point out, like in your background, Tim, it's a static piece of artwork. But if you go on Niio's website, a lot of what's highlighted is moving art. So, the question is for both of you, but Rob, why do you think there's been such an emphasis on moving art? Is it because it's digital, we can take advantage of, the artist can recreate things and differentiate from the analog world? Or is there do you see this, like, in other words, as an experimentation period, or do you see this as something that's gonna sustain this idea of moving art versus a more static image?
So first of all, if we look back since the 1960s, video art, which is essentially moving image, has it's been there since the 1960s. Every major private and public collection has video art or other forms of digital art, moving digital art. It enables the artist to have to I guess have a broader narrative in their artwork. Remember, everything when it comes to art is first and foremost about the artist wanting to tell a story, and they'll use technology to tell that story, and they're led by their artistic concept and their artistic direction beyond the technology. So yes, they like to be able to create in different ways, and of course, once you move onto a screen, you're not limited in terms of moving image. In terms of static, as Tim's showing some other ones right now, and not just are these moving image works, but also they become intelligent. So if you look at and you think about the evolution of visual, you go from something black and white text to something black and white, which is has a vectors and resolution, to something which is moving from an animated GIF through to up to 4K, 8K video, and beyond that you go into interactive code-based artworks where essentially the artist will use either existing or customized software to create real-time moving image. So it's actually a living, breathing artwork. So of course, the moment the canvas is a screen which can itself present something living, then artists will, no surprise, take advantage of that. But again, it's been there since the 1960s and 70s. Video art is definitely, a medium which has been on the map. And going forward, it's now having its moment. If you think photography came only 30, 40 years ago as an accepted medium, very much this medium is now there.
Interesting. And so, from a technology standpoint, Tim, when you're looking at different types of moving art and animated pieces, is there a certain technology? Say, if an artist wanted to say, I want to create, a 5-piece collection, right? And it's going to have this kind of animation quality. Do you help select the best technology for that? Is it direct view LED? Is it projection? Does that get factored into the artistic process ahead of time? I guess that's a question for both of you.
Absolutely, but of course it's also developing, right? I mean, you look at like Rob says, this is not new, right? There's artists that have been doing this for many years, and quite frankly, some of these artists have a knowledge of technology that is absolutely staggering, right? So they have been using really innovative, not only innovative technologies, but very innovative ways of using technologies. But it has been primarily in really large-scale public exhibitions, where they were doing things with buildings, for example. I remember something where I believe it was in London. Rob might remember it better than I do, but where someone was projecting like onto the tile so that it looked like people were actually underneath the square where this was taking place. So, some of these artists have amazing prowess in technology, but of course, what that then means is that it's usually only available to a level of artist and to a level of project that really has gigantic budgets. So, when you come into the home, for example, then I think that's where we can make a bigger difference by not only bringing this to more artists, but also making this available to more homes. But it's absolutely part of the creative process and should be part of the creative process in the sense that an artist should really be able to look at that and say, okay, this is what I'm trying to create. How do I use this? And I really see that as a contribution that we can make as well. So, I've been meaning to work on a white paper, for example, with a number of these artists, and also together with Niio to dive deeper into the specific aspects of direct view LED, for example. Where are its specific differences with projection? What situation can you use this in? And then, of course, there's also the architectural aspects of it, right? What's the situation? How are you using the space? That can also change it. If you look at the earlier image that I had in my background, this is in fact was also moving. It's just because it's a static background that you don't see it moving. But in this case, for example, doing it with direct view LED would have been impossible. Never mind the practical aspects and the structural aspects. But with direct view LED, for example, when the artwork was not on, you would have just had a giant black hole as the centerpiece of your home, which of course from an architectural perspective doesn't make sense. Now when the art is not active, for example, it turns back into a white wall, and actually in this specific house there's a pool outside, and when the wall is not active, then sunlight reflects off the pool onto the wall and creates kind of a natural sundial. So it's a kind of different experience. So you can't really say technology X is better or technology Y is better. It depends on how are you integrating it into the home, but most importantly, it also depends on what is the artist looking to create. Like one of the things that we did a little while ago was use direct view LED to create a small triptych of 3 square canvases. Rob probably remembers, the artist was Ronen Sharabani, I believe, that did that. And so you can really play with that, because you could have, for example, a person moving from one part of the triptych into the other part. So there's so many different things that you can create that relate not just to the technology, but really to the vision of the artist. And like Rob was saying before, moving art is it's a different medium. Some of these works, one of my favorite artists in general is Refik Anadol, and I would have not gotten to know Refik's work if it hadn't been for our association with Niio. But some of his works are mesmerizing. It's the kind of thing that you can stand in front, you can watch it, and it just has such an impact. And it's a completely different impact on a static piece work of art, which doesn't mean that one is better than the other. It's just different, and it has a different impact on you. And to me, that's what art is, right? Art is about the impact it has on you as a person, the way it makes you feel, and that's completely different and completely personal for every single person on the planet.
Yeah. And Rob, do you see the same thing happening where the digital artists are educating themselves on the technologies available before they create certain pieces to help bring that piece more to life in the home, or is that still like something that's developing and we need more education in the artistic community?
I think everything in the world of art, given so many people do not have a relationship with art, education is key. I think that you have a broad range of artists. If you look traditionally at the fine art world artists, some of those, the more established ones, a lot of them work cross medium. They paint and they sculpt, and some of them will do photography and will do video art, but they don't yet, deal with the kind of more progressive formats. You have the emerging artists who are almost kind of born digital. They're natively digital. They're the iPad generation. And some of the ones that that Tim has already referred to, they really push the frontiers. I mean, these guys are technologists, and what's very interesting is that there's a conversation nowadays about who is an artist. It used to be that you had to go through the traditional art world, or rather the fine art schools, and then be picked up by a gallery. What we're seeing now is an interesting conversation. There's a boundary. The boundaries are getting grey there. If you look at the community of animated game developers, they see themselves as artists. A lot of these guys have actually been, actually came originally from art school, and then they went into that direction. And it's often said that video game developers are the best there is in bringing emotion out through the screen. And a lot of these people actually, they'll go to work during the day in the video gaming studios, and then their passion and their pride is to actually create their art. So really, it is a hybrid. It needs education. What's very interesting is, in particular, since the beginning of this year, is some of the most established, well-known traditional artists are now looking at the digital space. In fact, and very often a lot of the big artists, like the really big artists, they're not sitting there creating everything by themselves. They have a studio of people and a team of people who are doing the work for them. And if they want to have help in visualizing or helping someone realize their vision, then they'll bring the people with the appropriate skill sets. Others will try and develop by themselves. We have at Niio actually internally now, actually a studio of over 20 cutting edge kind of technology designers and artists who work now with some of the biggest artists in the world, who are now looking to go into the digital space. So they come with their artistic vision, and then we help them realize that. So it really is a mix, but education is absolutely key. And certainly, if I look at Barco in particular, they've been very progressive in terms of that desire to educate the community. It's taken some time, but I don't really feel that most of the artists, even the more progressive ones, really have a very strong sense of, if we're talking specifically about display technology. And so, education needs to extend from the technology capabilities, but also from the market capabilities. It all needs to come together. It has to be an ecosystem play. They have to understand, from a legal standpoint, the standards that are coming to play in terms of what you buy when you buy a piece of digital art. The artists need to know about the technology options that exist. There's a lot of commercial questions and technical questions, so it all needs to come together, and education is critical.
Absolutely. So let's transition into the Niio platform in a little bit more detail, and let's get more educated on how it works. One thing that was really interesting to me is the platform is secure enough where you have a system that people can loan, subscribe, preview, right? How do you manage to do that while keeping the integrity of that person's collection?
So let's look at it from the perspective of the artist. That's where we start. The artists or the galleries that specialize in this work, they're able to use the Niio platform as a set of dedicated professional tools, which start with them uploading their highest quality, uncompressed master artwork files, so up to sometimes over 1,000 gig per file. And so we give them the ability to ingest under their account an unlimited number of works. They provide all the curatorial and the metadata for those works, and they are responsible for self-publishing and defining the commercial rights for how they want each of those works to be accessible on the platform. And what that does is enable us to give all of the artists access onto the platform, but it doesn't mean that when you go onto the discovery area that they'll all be shown. We have the ability to curate the discovery area, and we'll come on to that in a moment. So they can either privately manage their work and just store it on the platform, or use Niio as an alternative to Google Drive and WeTransfer by sharing it with other people. Or they can transact privately. So sometimes if you have an artist in a gallery and they already know their collector, they can use the Niio platform to transfer ownership or to loan an artwork, for example, and deal with all the commerce aspects of it. And it essentially goes from one account to the other. On the cloud, we store and digitally preserve those master files, but we have the ability to render out different display copy versions of different resolutions and frame rates, so that ultimately, when we finally get to the screen, we're able to match what artwork someone has access to in terms of what they've loaned, what they've bought, or what they've subscribed to. And we make sure that the display, our display software player is able, which can be either external with an HDMI box, or it can actually be on a smart screen, a software app. It can read the capabilities of the screen and then actually make sure that it's giving it access either to a download or a streaming copy, which is optimized for that device. So the artists go up, they upload their works. So as we said, right now we have over 15,000 artworks on the platform. And then on the other side, the consumers will be able to go into a discovery area. They can first and foremost use Niio as a freemium offering. In fact, we're launching our subscription freemium offering in a few months' time, 3 months' time. So you'll be able to use Niio for free, the combination of a mobile app and then unlimited screens that you pair your mobile app with, which means your mobile phone can then actually act as a discovery suite, where you can actually discover curated collections of artworks with the curation and the education all there to make it easy for you to find work which is appropriate to you. As a freemium subscriber, you get access to these works, but they're limited resolution and they have watermarks. The moment you start subscribing, they unlock high quality works and you get access to a limited number of works on a monthly basis. And then you can go into catalogs of artworks which are only available to either loan, a kind of video on demand loan for a month, or to actually purchase. Everything is done through for the purchase and loans, using the blockchain technology. We support now NFTs, which are essentially digital certificates, which are then put onto the blockchain. I won't go too much into detail, but essentially it's a very holistic solution which enables easy access for people to experience the works according to different business models, and then experience them in the highest possible quality with a Sonos type experience to be able to manage the playback over multiple screens, to schedule that work. When we first came into market in terms of monetizing, we knew that the market wasn't ready so much for the consumers, so we put a big focus on what we refer to as showcase locations, commercial spaces, real estate lobbies, hospitality locations, in order to be able to really showcase to the broadest possible audience. So we're the global supplier to the Hiltons and Marriotts and cruise ships and some of the biggest real estate developers in the world. And that enabled us and ensured that we had a platform which was robust enough to really be a 24/7 unattended solution, which meant that really it could replace a physical painting without anyone needing to be there to service it. And that foundation in terms of robust technology has been leveraged as we look now to take the consumer market. And for us, the consumer market in terms of the offering and the Niio brand is something which will be hitting America very strongly in the final quarter of this year. So right now we're gearing up for a very significant US launch.
Fantastic. I think that's what caught my attention from what you said is, so it's not just about owning the piece of digital artwork. You're providing the ability for people to explore. Here's the different types of artwork that are available on the platform. Maybe you're interested in this, learn more about it. Once you get them engaged, then the next level is, yes, I want to unlock this better experience. I want to, potentially invest in the Barco Niio solution, or I want to see, just the curiosity keeps growing and growing and growing, and you're turning people from maybe more passive admirers of art to enthusiasts and connoisseurs.
Absolutely, there is. Education obviously is key. You want to give people an access point which is appropriate for them. We use intelligence to kind of understand your tastes and the type of person that you are, if you're a collector or if you're a novice. If I'm a collector, a traditional art world collector, it may be that the curated collections showed for me will be more abstract, more conceptual, deeper, harder hitting artworks. Whereas for someone who is new to art might be looking for something where the visual aesthetic is a little bit more important. And so the notion of high quality curation is as important as the education, and then the technology just needs to make it seamless and easy. And exactly as you said, from a business model standpoint, we believe that with a freemium model as a starting point, which can be almost shared, socially. Even you can send someone an artwork through WhatsApp, and then one click and they're a Niio account member, and they can then be casting it onto a screen if they haven't even installed an app. All of those details of minutia have been painstakingly thought out, strategically, and then implemented technically by a very talented team over a number of years. And at the same time, one also needs to build credibility with the art, the supply side of the artists and the galleries, who see us as the credible entity to underpin this market, as opposed to someone that just wants to come in like an elephant in a china shop and break the rules and just put a whole hogwash of artists next to each other with no thought, and not necessarily creating an artistic context. So all of these nuances needed to be brought together, and again, that's why it's so important that the people that we partner with are people that embrace that, they understand that, and and they support the the emergence of the market. But I think it's fair to say that what you're seeing right now, in terms of if you use the financial model of an S curve, this is a market which has been bubbling over the last few years, and it's on a very high growth rate right now.
Interesting. So how do you see the next few years developing, not just for Niio, but for Niio and Barco? And I'd like Tim to answer the question second as well. Where do you see additional synergies? How do you see things getting more well known or more impactful in this space?
So I think Tim mentioned it earlier. Barco Residential focuses on a sector of the market which is highly influential. It's maybe a little bit more niche in terms of it being the higher echelon, but these are people that want the utmost quality, which means that first of all, we have, from our side, we have both subscription models, which will be the $10 a month subscription model for the average homeowner, but we then have very premium ones for around about $100 a month, which give you access to blue chip art, which is much more appropriate for Barco's type of customers. And we're working on campaigns so that Barco customers will get access, when we launch for a period of time to those platforms. But not only that, it gives them access to blue chip catalogs, which either will be simply high ticket items from high end artists, which will only be appropriate for a Barco type of audience. But also, in the nature of this space, there are times when you do have artists creating works in a very unique format, which is not, as Tim said, it's not a 16:9 format. In some cases, there's even a desire, sometimes for people to have an artwork commissioned and created for them, for their home, and the architect, it becomes a much more white gloves experience. The architect and the designer and the homeowner wants an entire wall or an entire ceiling to be, a particular size, resolution, or size, and from that they determine the resolution, and from that, together we have access to the biggest community of premium artists that can be brought on to actually create custom commissioned works. And finally, and I'll draw reference to something that we're doing, a showcase we're doing together at Harrods in London. There are times when Barco are creating some unique formats as kind of standard offerings, so to speak, for the purpose of this space. So taking an LED, which is almost kind of, I guess, it kind of is a portrait. It's not 16:9. It's not 16:9. It's a unique aspect ratio and resolution, but it's something which really could be kind of a dedicated art canvas for a very exclusive audience. And and together we're already creating artworks for that particular aspect ratio. So as has always been the case in many sectors, in particular art, there is unique, exclusive, limited editions, scarcity, and customized options for a very high net worth audience. But I think the fact that we have access together to those freemium solutions, it's a very easy entrance point. The fact that people can get access to a subscription model to start with, just so they get to sense what this is all about. And what's amazing is that we're going through a behavioral shift here. And what you see is that when someone has a black screen, which they've turned into an art canvas, whether that's their 55 or 65-inch monitor at home, or whether it's their LED or cinema wall, once they've gone from that being a black screen until it's being used to watch Netflix, play a game, or watch a soccer match. And they actually realize that it's used in the background when it's not on as a TV, but they're in the home, it becomes an art canvas. The moment you then turn it off and you take that experience away from them, people feel that you've ripped something out of their soul. So the fact that together we've got the combination of options, and we have in terms of the combinations of art and the business models, and we've been able to kind of work together on the technical side, I think that we provide something of great interest to a very significant audience. It may be niche, but it's still 2 million people, I think Tim talks about, around the world. So if you ask me where we'd be in the next few years, for us, we would like to think that we're a name associated with this medium, quite outrightly, that people will know Niio. And just like you have brands like Armani, and then you have Armani jeans, the ability for us to segregate for the high end and the low end, but certainly Niio will be a premium brand that you want to associate with. And the example I would give is, if you think of brands like Apple. Apple have done a fantastic job in having a premium product, which certainly is adapted, embraced by the higher end of the market, but also other people who are not in the same category will still use those Apple products in the same way. So I think that we like to be in millions of locations in the next few years, but with a high focus on that that luxury layer, who are really going to have the opportunity to have the best canvases, the best art, and that's something we'd like to do and showcase together with Barco.
That's a great answer. I think I want to jump in right there, because it speaks to a challenge that, as a custom integrator, we have in our industry. It's really important that you and Barco don't dilute your brand, because just because you want to reach more people, when you see like a lot of streaming devices, right, an Apple TV, a Roku, the quality is so compromised that too often people don't experience what a 4K disc looks like, or what a kaleidoscope looks like, what it looks like on a higher resolution, higher quality medium. So they are never given the opportunity, unless they run into us somehow, to experience that whole world that they're missing out on. So by offering that in the beginning, and by having thought that through, you're preserving the quality of the brand of Niio and of the Barco digital artwork experience, but you're also allowing people who are getting into art and learning it to aspire to something better, which we don't have a clear picture of in our industry right now.
Yeah, absolutely, and never compromising on quality, either the display quality, but also the quality of the artwork. The artwork on the Niio platform is going to be very high quality. It might be, as I said, that where the curatorial aspect and some of the business models are adapted in such a way that we're able to have something a little bit different from different audiences, and certainly formats will detect that. But on the whole, the brand cannot be compromised. Niio is almost a luxury lifestyle brand. And it's going to be very important. That's why I don't think that we're eyeing to reach 260 million subscribers like a Netflix. But if we take 10% of those of people who are culturally aware, who appreciate design and fashion and architecture and art, there is a significant audience there which should be incorporated with our focus.
Absolutely. And Tim, where do you see the Niio Barco project heading in the next few years, or what would you like to see added that isn't here right now?
Well, I think it's not so much that something needs to be added that isn't here right now. I mean, I've seen the evolution of the Niio platform over the past couple of years, and I think it's a really robust platform. The security aspect is important. The thing that attracted us about Niio is, as Rob mentioned before, is they're really hooked into the art market, right? It's really an understanding of the ecosystem. It's not, hey, we have some technology, let's see if we can make some money with this. It really goes all the way to the highest possible quality, but it also goes, as Rob says, it goes to areas where we, for example, don't play that much anymore, which is absolutely fine, because that has also always been part of the art history, right? If you look at it, even in the Middle Ages or everywhere else, where people inspired was, the great art collectors, people that even built their homes to house art. they inspired. They were the mecenas of the art world. They were the ones that helped create a vibrancy that helped give artists a living, and then that became more available to the broader public as well, because art is a public good in a certain way as well. So from my perspective, the thing that we really need now is awareness, right? People need to be more aware of how the Niio platform works, for example. People need to see what's possible. If you look at the home behind me, it was really interesting for me to see how all the people that visited the home, because this was a home that was open to the public for for about 2 or 3 weeks before it got shut down because of COVID, but it was open to the public. It attracted a lot of people from the architecture and design community, but it also attracted a lot of people from the general public, because when they opened it up, it was to the benefit of the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. So a lot of people came through the home, and it was amazing to see the impact. Just people walking in and being gripped by what they saw. Not even being prepared for this, right? Not being said, hey, you're coming to look at digital art, or hey, we make some technology, come have a look at it. These were people that were walking in with no expectations, not coming to see this, and the impact of it was amazing. Even the reaction of the person that was then selling the house after it was put on the market, who was a luxury real estate agent, basically afterwards said to me, any home as of a certain level of home should have this. This is a no-brainer. If people can only get exposed to this, there's no reason why they wouldn't want to have these kinds of experiences in their home. So to me, that's the main thing. It's exposure, right? It's being able to do projects together. It's being able to inspire other people with these projects. That is really what is going to make the biggest difference, I think. And as in many things, the first ones are the hardest ones, right? Because you need someone that's willing to take a jump, even if they don't know everything, right? Even if they're not sure of how it all works or what the impact is going to be. But I think things like NFTs are a good are a good evolution as well, because obviously one of the things that people were maybe worried about was, well, hey, if I go to a gallery and I buy a painting for an amount of money, then the only thing I really need to be certain about is that it's authentic, and I can have it authenticated, I can invest in this, and I can have confidence that I'm making a good investment. With digital art, people weren't quite sure, right? What happens if I have this in my home? If someone comes into my home with a USB stick, and they manage to copy the work of art, do they now have it as well? And does that dilute my ownership of the work of art? So those things are getting progressively addressed. And of course, companies like Niio are the ones that are leading the charge there and are absolutely critical in making that happen. I mean, at the end of the day, if we go back 500 years, we're the guys that are making the canvas, right? We're not making the painting, and we're not making the paint. And so I think as people get more familiar with how everything works, I think it's not a lack of technical progress. I mean, if I look at the Niio platform, it's fantastic. It's just that not enough people know how it works. Not enough people are aware of how you get involved. And so that for me is the main thing now. Education, and more than anything, inspiration.
Great. I agree completely. So my last question as we wrap up here, for Rob and for Tim, what have I missed in this conversation that you feel would be important to talk about for at least a few minutes?
So I think you've covered the main points. I think following on from what Tim said at the end, both Barco Residential, from a business standpoint, challenge me if I'm accurate here, or if I'm wrong here, Tim. Niio was a relatively early stage startup in a market which was still finding itself, and as an early stage startup, you were even with millions of dollars of funding, you're still limited in what you can do. Barco Residential is part of this huge organization, but still a relatively small group within the big picture. And part of, if you talk about educating and awareness, then there's two things you need to have. If you're involved, if the responsibility falls on your shoulders to, create a market, it's very hard and it's very slow. Okay, where we've been very fortunate is that the NFT hype and bubble, which is an offset of the crypto world, whatever the reasons, this has legitimized the concept of people being able to own and trade a digital collectible, and the primary focus there is art. And such has been the momentum and the hype that on the one side, the customers are asking questions. Fortunately, from our side, investors were asking questions, so we're going to announce a very significant funding round. But what that does is, and NFT was the most searched word on Google, some weeks ago. Now, from our perspective, where we're excited is when we look, for example, at the US market. For the first time, we'll be able to come out at a time when the market is hot. A lot of the education in terms of kind of high level kind of reference to this in all of the publications that people read, from the broadsheets to the Poacher magazines. And we're very fortunate now. We have millions of dollars and some of the best branding and advertising people in America who are now behind this machine. And so I think the last thing that I would say is that in any business you need to have a clear purpose, you need to have a clear vision. And what for us has been exciting working with the guys at Barco is that from the beginning from the early days of when there was a clear vision and we were focused on getting there, you need to be resilient and keep going. And I think that this is the time now where, as I said earlier, whether you call it karma or whether you just call it the evolution that we all knew was happening and it's just taken off. I think that the conversation here, and we can record this and put a date in our diary for this time next year. I think what you're going to see over the next 12 months, where the hype is going to subside, but what's going to be left with is probably a few players, as always the case when there's a good market, coming out and suddenly being able to promote and campaign in a totally different level to how it's ever been done before. And the fact that we've had time to prepare it, to shape the story, to work on the technology, to have people who buy into this already, to have the influencers, the pioneers, the early adopters, it's just about now, executing this out, and enjoying the ride and enjoying the momentum, because we're moving to critical mass. And so, I'm just excited and just want to, thank Tim for his support and the partnership along the way. And I think that collaboration in any industry now is key to success. And we look forward to continuing ours together with Tim and the guys at Barco.
And from my perspective also, I mean, the thing that's the most important is the shared vision, right? And I felt that we've had that shared vision since we first met. And of course, along the way, how you execute on it may change a little bit, but as long as you have that shared vision, that's really the thing. And I also feel like Rob says that now is the time. A lot of the things that have happened over the past 12 months, not only the fact that you have NFTs now, but also the fact that people look differently at life with everything that's happened over the past 12 months. So I would say maybe the final thing that I would say is, if you're an integrator, now is really the time to get involved. Right, I fully agree with Rob that the things that we have been working towards over the past couple of years, now is the time when a lot of those things are going to start to happen. So as an integrator that has this kind of audience, you need to get involved now. But I would also say to the architects and designers, familiarize yourself with what we're talking about here, because it has so many opportunities also from a design perspective. And whenever we've done things like you see behind me and some of the earlier images that you saw, for an architect and a designer, it's not only very exciting, but it's also something where it makes a difference to your work. It makes a difference to what you can create, and you want to be part of the vanguard there, right? You want to be part of. You don't want to be a follower, especially in architecture and design. You want to be a leader. So I would say now is the time to get involved, familiarize yourself, and obviously myself and Rob, I'm sure would be more than happy to help educate people and point them in the right direction. But I'm very excited. I believe, like Rob, a lot of the things that we've been working towards over the past couple of years, I think a lot of progress is going to be made in the next 12 months.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both for being here and for this excellent conversation. I look forward to having some exciting future projects with you and helping to spread the word.
Fantastic. Thanks guys. Be well. Be well. Bye bye.